Hello, MotoAmerica fans. Welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I am Bice in Central Ohio, not too far from Pittsburgh International Race Complex, where we all were last weekend. And Paul is back, snug as a bug in a rug, out there in Southern California, probably enjoying the sunshine. We got a little sunshine here too, so it's not too bad. Paul, I drove to this one. You know, sometimes I don't get home before you when I drive because you go back in time when you go to California. But this time I think I got home a little bit before you, but we both got home in a decent hour on Monday. So, but that's about as far. Well, no, actually next event, when we go to New Jersey, that's pretty much as far as you fly from Southern California to, well, Southern New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't think I go much farther than that. The Pittsburgh thing, it's funny. When I make my plane reservations, every time I'm like, oh, I'm going to take the earliest flight so I can get home. Well, I'm going to start not doing that because the Pittsburgh thing was so early. I think we left the hotel at 4:45 in the morning or something ridiculous.
I hate that. Yeah, that's
and then
terrible.
you get home earlier, but you're kind of shattered anyways. There's not much you can do. So
Right.
yeah, for New Jersey, we actually booked that not so long ago. We're gonna come back a bit later, which makes sense.
Yeah. So we got a couple weeks off here before New Jersey, and then I think there's 1 week before that one, and then the final round at Barber. But man, it's coming right down to it. And we've been saying, a lot of the teams have been saying too, that it's been a really quick season. I don't really understand why. I mean, they always say when you get older, things go by quicker, but I don't think that's it. I don't know what it is, but didn't it fly by quick to you?
Yeah, it did. I think maybe it's just I hate to say post-pandemic, but I mean it might have something to do with that, just like everybody's kind of more back to normal than they've been for the past few years. So and with normal comes, I don't know, but it just seemed like it went by quickly. It doesn't seem that long ago we were at Coda and now we're going to Jersey and then Barber and wrapping things up. So, but it's it's been a wonderful year so far, and it's certainly going to be an exciting finish because the majority of the championships are still really close, and especially the Superbike championship. I mean, you can't get closer than what that is right now. So yeah, it's going to be a fun couple of races here to finish things up, and then we start planning for next year. Before you know it, we'll be back at Daytona and doing the thing again. So
yeah, and I know the new schedule for 2023 is being worked on now. I think the hope is it's going to be out around Barber, but which should be good, and it'll be interesting to see what we're doing next year. I would expect that a lot of it would still be the same, but we'll certainly find out on that. Well, let's talk about our guest that we have on today. It's Colin Barton from Bartcon Racing, and he is also the owner of Bartcon Construction, and that's a side of it. I've talked to Colin a little bit in the paddock, but we usually talk a lot about racing, and I've never really spoke to him about what his business is. So there's a lot that we could find out about him, but he has Dominic Doyle, who races for him on a Yamaha YZF R7 in Twins Cup. And Dom actually had a good weekend this past weekend. He was on the podium on Sunday. And he's also, he's also racing in Supersport too. We'll get into that a little bit later, but let's bring Colin in. So Colin is Colin. So you probably know the album that Sting did called An Englishman in New York, but you're an Irishman in New York. Is that right?
That's right, guys. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, that's right. Irishman in New York. Came out here in 91. 31,
okay.
31 years ago, I landed in the Big Apple, yeah.
What brought you to America? How did that all come about? And were you in construction in Ireland? I assume so.
Yeah, I left school young and I went to it was an ironworks. And I was actually, believe it or not, I was overseas when my brother and sister who'd already lived here applied for citizenship, and part of that they got an amnesty for anybody else in their family. And I kind of won a raffle. It was called a Donnelly visa, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that's how I ended up coming to New York. I was actually over in Europe, somewhere misbehaving.
So listen, I'm gonna stick my neck out here because I never know how to ask this or when to, but I do know for a fact that Jeremy McWilliams is an Ulsterman. Are you an Ulsterman?
I'm not. No, that's Pete. Uncle Pete is an Ulsterman. I'm from the south. I'm from Dublin.
You're from Dublin. Okay.
Yeah, gotcha. I think Jeremy's from Belfast, I think, from Uri.
Yeah, that's exactly where he's from. Yeah.
Well, you know Pete that works with me. Pete's from the same neck of the woods.
Yes. Exactly.
He would be neighbors, yeah.
Do those guys talk funny in the north?
Well, I think everyone talks funny all over that country. And then we come here and all you guys talk funny.
We sure do. We sure do.
A lot of funny accents going around. Well, you know what? New York City is the melting pot of the world, really. So, I mean, everyone has accents now. You can get paramedics and ambulances, cops. You know, there's no... All the Americans are dead. They were called the Apache, the Sioux, and you know, the Indians are all gone. It's all tourists now.
Right.
You know, one thing I've noticed this year, Colin, and you're probably more familiar with it than anybody. You haven't really had the luck of the Irish in 2022 as far as the racing goes.
That is true. I guess we have to talk about this, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
You know what? It's very, very simple, and I don't want to be negative or start crying about it. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is we got into the Twins Cup very, very late because we didn't know what we were doing with the Super Sport package, because the year before we had rode ZX6, which was another bad year because at the start of it, Dominic managed to break his wrist. So at the end of that year, we were waiting to find out what the specs were going to be for the Kawasaki in the Super Sport Series for this season. And they were, to be honest with you, they were a long time coming to find out what was going to go on with the likes of velocity stacks and cams and stuff. And then we couldn't get the answers fast enough. So myself and Mike made a decision and said, you know what, fuck this, we're going to go with the R7, excuse my French. But we jumped on the R7 package late in the game and kind of scrambled to get parts, to get motors built. But at that stage, that was it. We were doing that or we were doing nothing. So we proceeded. And we had some motors built by Sam McDonald out in the West Coast, well, not West Coast, but out the West Side. And we got everything together. We only got one shakedown of the bike, which was in Crescent in Texas. And then we went out and we went to Daytona, and that was the start of this year's series. And as far as having bad luck, yeah, we didn't have the power we should have had in the first race. Dominic went out in the second race, and I believe it might have been Corey Ventura's bike, might have dumped a bit of oil on the track, but I know Dominic went down in the siding or the warm-up lap, came back in with the bike, said the bike was fine. There was a red flag, actually, if you remember correctly, in the second race at Daytona. A lot of bikes. Dominic went down on some either water or coolant or oil. But the bottom line is he came in and I asked him, was he okay on the siding lap? And he said, yeah, 2 thumbs up. Went out in the warm-up lap, 2 thumbs up. He went off at the start of the race into turn 2, throttle straight open. We picked up a stone that got caught inside the throttle on the handlebar, which is, so the bike was pinned flat out. He was going straight across the grass to the other side of the International Horseshoe. And the only thing to do was to just get off the bike, and he had to ditch it. And that was the start of our season. Thank you, Daytona.
Yeah.
Then we went, we didn't have the power at MotoAmerica really either, which is a real big power track, you know. And after that, it was just bad luck after bad luck. As Dominic says, SOL, shit out of luck.
Yeah.
But then we threw a bottom end bearing on the left on the Conrad. That was, I believe, that was at the Ridge. Thought it was fuel starvation. Changed out the pump, went out on the bike, and completely wrecked the motor. So now we're scrambling, which is why we didn't make Brainerd to get 2 motors. And thank you so much from Chuck Giacchetto and Tom Halverson. Helped us out so much to get us back to where we are last week at Pittsburgh. I can't thank the guys enough as far as getting parts and just getting it squared away. And we finally gotten Dom now onto a bike where he can show his talent, you know. I mean, Dominic said it at the end of race 2 but last week, that had the race went full term, he thinks he might have been able to win it. He was gaining on the guys. It was a great race. But
you know, Colin, that Yamaha R7 this year, I mean, it's really, I know they introduced it last year. I remember Jackson Blackman, I think, was the first one to ride on it, but for sure that bike is very stout this year. I mean, obviously they swept the podium on Sunday at Pittsburgh, but you know, the Aprilia RS 660 has been kind of the bike to be there. At least it was last year. Obviously won the championship, but Yamaha stepped up. That bike is definitely different from that MT-07, even though it's supposed to be just a few things with it, turning it from kind of a street bike into a sport bike, but it certainly is doing a good job. And to your point about Dom saying it's a good, you know, he could have won it. I mean, he must be pretty happy to ride it, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, going back to how the season's gone so far, I mean, I can't blame Dominic for any of it because, you know, Dominic is so talented. You know, it breaks my heart to see him coming off the track, not in the top 5. And even at that, 4th or 5th kind of pisses both of us off. And on the Aprilia thing, I mean, I think the concept of Aprilia launching into this Twins Cup it was kind of plug and play deal with that. You buy the bike, you get on it and you go. You know, it was kind of ready to race kind of scenario. Whereas there is quite a bit of work you got to put into the R7 to compete against the Aprilia. And so much, I mean, a few people had approached me at the end of the season before, asking me about, you know, would Dom be interested in riding a bike, and essentially Aprilia's. And, you know, and then of course nothing was for free. So I said, hang on a second, if we're going to give that kind of money for Dom to ride an Aprilia, why can't we just go and do our own R7 stuff, you know? So that's why we're on the app at the moment.
Now, let's go back a little bit with Dominic Doyle, because we know you think a lot of him. Paul and I do too. We've, you know, even before he raced for you, we were paying attention to him a lot, and he's a good rider when he raced in Junior Cup. Took it to Rocco Landers a few times. So how did you originally get started with Dominic? And by the way, he's from South Africa, as we know. Is Doyle an Irish last name, or am I wrong about that?
No, big time, yeah. Doyle's a big time Irish name, yeah.
That's what I thought. So did that have anything to do with it?
Well, I don't, you know, in fairness, I mean, it's South Africa. You know, I think most of the white people down there don't have regular, like, local names, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And did he have anything to do with what? Oh, did it have anything to do with his last name? Absolutely not, no.
Well, but how did you get started with him? How did you get to know him?
I can tell you exactly how it happened. Dom was at the track struggling on a 400. It was there himself and his stepdad, Theo, great guy. And they were essentially working out the back of a Ford Econoline. This was 3 years ago, maybe. And I don't need to mention a kid's name. Anyone that knows the story knows who it is. But there was a kid riding for me whose father turned around one night and thought it was a good idea to rent another team's bike that didn't have a rider, which, of course, straight fucking sent me off the fucking rails. I'm like, whoa, time out. What? We're renting somebody else's bike? Why? What's wrong with mine? And you know what? That is a typical father-son thing. 90% of the time, but it might be a little less. There's a lot of, it's not my kid, it's your bike type of thing. So I went nuts. I mean, I was so pissed. And I was like, I was ready to quit. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm done. Sorry, I have the guys using your beeper later on. But I called up at the time, Jason Farrell and Dustin. God rest him. It was his birthday yesterday, actually.
Yes. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Dusty. So they were working with me and they were talking me down because I was like done. I'm like, I'm selling everything. Fuck these guys. You know, I was losing it. And then Dustin kind of talked me down and said, "What do you think about Dominic?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love Dominic. He's a great kid." He goes, "Well, why don't we call him up?" So I called up Mom, and it took her all of 0.536 of a second to say yes. I could hear Dominic in the background going, "Yeah." So, well, you know what? It was probably the best thing that ever happened to Bartcon Racing. You know, anyone, like I said, anyone that has to ask the question of who the kid is in this scenario doesn't really need to know, because everybody else that does know, if you know what I mean. So. And I don't, because I don't want to be bad mouthing or talking about people, but it was the best thing that ever happened to Bartcon Racing, and we haven't looked back. You know, great season the following year. Dom came second. We actually won both races at the opener and got protested for our ECU, which came back clean, which is a badge I wear with great honor, to be accused of cheating. Because I actually took it as an insult, because when someone says you're cheating, they're pretty much telling you you can't build a bike as good as they can. So I was like,
right.
That's exactly what that's what they're saying, you know. So we got protested. We won our protests. We were clean. Words were had. Words were said. People got pissed off. I could give a shit. But we have a clean record, and like I said, we haven't looked back. Dom's a great kid. He rides his heart out. And right now, where we are today is just after two seasons of real. I'm not going to say this season because it's not over yet, but last year wasn't great, and this year isn't being great. But hopefully, we can close on a bang, because it's very important for me to be able to showcase Dominic to beyond me at Bartcon Racing. You know, it's very important for other people to see what the kid is doing, which is why I thought it was a good idea to let him go out and race on that 600 for Jesse. You know, Jesse's a great guy. Disrupt Racing. Jesse called me and asked me, would he be interested in letting Dom ride a few 600 races at the end of the season? And I said 100%, once it doesn't have a major conflict with us. I mean, essentially, we're not doing anything other than, again, trying to showcase Dominic's talent for the rest of the year and trying to get some good results on the R7. So, you know, I made the decision that, yeah, absolutely, you know, I mean, especially with this one twin race scenario, which is quite annoying, but I don't want to get into that, to be honest with you. But I've been told by MotoAmerica already that it's going to be addressed for next year. How they address it, I don't know, but I don't even know if I'm going to be there next year in the twins. So.
Sorry, let me clarify this for the fans, and a lot of them know. But so right now, the situation with Dominic Doyle is he's racing for Bartcon Racing in Twins Cup on a Yamaha YZF R7, but actually he's also racing for Disrupt Racing, Jesse Wilka, who Colin mentioned, on a GSXR 600, which actually happens to be Carl Soltis's old bike. Carl switched to a 750. And now Dom is on a 600, one of the only Suzuki 600s that still exists, and the bike is pretty stout. So, you know, Colin, we talked about this at the beginning of the year. Let me just kind of divert to this for a second, and it's okay for you to. Where we were all wondering, we didn't know, and I'm still looking at it in this whole super sport next generation, and it's amazing how it's come around with what Rocco's done on a 600, and you know, Dominic's doing okay on a 600. He's learning the bike. And I don't know. I mean, obviously it looks like Heron's going to win on that 955, and he'll be the first one to tell you that the thing's been you know, balanced back quite a bit. The 750s are pretty stout, those Suzukis. But, you know, where do you think we are with this super sport situation now? Because I know that contributed somewhat to you having Dom race in Twins Cup, because there were a lot of unknowns with that super sport class. So give us a little bit of a rundown on that, if you would.
Well, I mean, myself and Michael from Triple Strong Racing, who builds our motors, we it was too gray. It wasn't clear enough for us to make a decision on whether we were going to do the 600 program, because they hadn't officially announced that the 750 was homologated, or the Ducati for that matter. They were talking about an MV Augusta, I believe, too, and also some triples, right? So, you know, we were reaching out to Teague on a regular basis, and I can't blame Teague either, because he wasn't getting the information himself, which I believe was coming from FIM Europe. And so not having enough information to put together a proper package, and looking at the talent that we knew was coming up in the Twins Cup, because as Corey Ventura said in his interview on the podium on Sunday, you know, I don't think people show enough respect to the Twins Cup. This is exactly what Corey said. He goes, I mean, these guys are flying. It's a great series. And knowing that the talent that was going to be in that Twins Cup was what helped us make our decision on entering it. And again, not to repeat what we talked about the R7, we know what happened with the build itself. But if you're asking me where I think the Super Sport package is going, I mean, is there going to be any more changes in it? I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm surprised at how fast the R6s are flying against the likes of the 750 and Josh Heron's.
Yep.
Panigale. But then they are dumbing them bikes down quite a bit. You know, I mean, I think I'm not sure, but I think the numbers on the Panigale, are they restricted to 11.5 grand maybe, or is it less? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on the numbers. But the same with the 750 is restricted. I mean, Jesse will tell you that the 600 is based on the restrictions on the 750. He's got more power, but they're talking about torque curves on the 750. And I mean, when the whole thing was being put together and thought up by whoever thought it up, to be honest with you, I couldn't understand what the logic of it was. I mean, we've always watched racing like, since the early AMA to now, and like Super Sport has been a 600 series, you know. So, is there something I don't know about next year yet? I don't know. Is there going to be a big announcement in 600s? I don't know. I don't know I heard a rumor. Rumors are rumors, but I did hear something about possibly the 600 being a 1 hour race once a weekend and not a two race event. Did you guys hear anything like that?
No. That's interesting.
Well, no, I haven't heard.
There's a little bit of rumor brewing there. Put that out there.
That's pretty cool.
That was mentioned. I don't know if that was mentioned or said, or someone thought it might be a good idea to have, you know, the 1 hour race instead of two half-hour races. There's a lot of stuff that I don't understand that's going on over there, and I don't want to get into it. I complained a lot about it, but I mean, between the, you know, the hooligan stuff and the baggers and the Royal Enfield stuff, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's super bike, super sport, and everything else is kind of secondary. But I think the Twins guys get a bad shake because at the end of the day, there's a lot of season entries in that Twins Cup, you know, and a lot of single weekend races, like single race weekends, you know, which I think is a bit unfair. But again, I've mentioned it. I've expressed my opinion, which I'm not shy about doing, as you know. And I've been told that it's been addressed, and that obviously I'm not the only person that's not happy about, especially like the East Coast teams that, you know, you got guys that are, you know, they're putting every last penny they got into this, and they're dragging a bike out to California for one race. You know, that's a bit unfair. You know, there's some small guys out there that are genuinely, you know, putting their heart and souls into this. And I mean, I'll give Chris Parrish a mention. Chris he's a trooper. But I mean, yeah, you couldn't expect Chris to drag his stuff over to the West Coast for this one race stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. Everyone sees different problems with different things. I don't think there's a lot of problems in MotoAmerica. I think it has the potential to be great again. And not that it's not great now, but obviously everyone's opinion of what MotoAmerica is, especially as an owner of a team working in a series, is based on the series they're in.
Right.
You know? Like, I'm sure the bagger guys think this is a great old hoop, you know, and obviously it's a marketable thing. It's working for them. We've got a lot of fans are coming out to watch it. I mean, my buddy was up in the corkscrew for the bagger race. He was like, the whole place was covered in Harley deals. It was like insane. It was like walking into a Harley festival. They were up in the woods in the corkscrew. There was a bunch of dudes up there watching, and that's great, you know. But it can't be just whatever gets people in the door. You know, it's got to be, you know, it's, again, I don't want to start getting opinionated and having to face the wrath of people later on. But I mean, I don't know. Are they doing the Royal Enfield thing again next year? I'm not even sure if they're doing it.
Yeah, I don't think that's been decided yet.
Right. But I mean, I heard something at the track. Again, I don't know how true it is, and I don't want to be putting out words. But I mean, I heard that I don't know that Kaylee is going to be going back to that because she's kind of walking away with it.
Hey, yeah, you mentioned Kaylee Bike. Hey,
yeah, like, I mean, I sponsor Kaylee. She called me up.
Yeah, that's your girl. Talk about her a little bit. Yeah,
Kaylee's a sweetheart. And I mean, when I worked with Ryan in the Twins Cup a couple of years back when he had a bad crash up. I think we were at the time that was the ridge we were at. But at the time, Ed was working with him, Ed Kay, and Kaylee and Ed were they would hang out together, and Kaylee would end up coming to she was a great girl for just doing stuff and being on the team, and she'd throw on a shirt and work away. So when she got invited to go to Royal Enfield, you know, she approached me and I said, yeah, I can help you out. So I think we got her, myself and Mike, we got her name Solo. And then we also threw her some tire money and stuff like that. But I mean, she's having a great year. She's flying in that series. But then I think she's been told, and I don't know that it was by MotoAmerica, I think it was more by Royal Enfield that I mean, I think she's going to win the title. I don't want to put bad luck on her, but I don't see her not winning it. But that she's not going to be invited back. I don't know that she's going to defend her title. Which, I mean, I think they're going the wrong way. Instead of getting better riders, they're taking out the best rider. So essentially, I think they're going to make the series weaker.
Well, I mean, we saw that happen last year because CJ Lukash, was the dominant force last year, even more so than probably Kaylee. And I know Kaylee's winning all the races, but I'm just saying there are a couple riders that are closer to her. CJ just destroyed everybody. And I don't know the situation on that. I don't know if she was not asked to be back or she didn't want to be back. We don't know the answer to that. But theoretically or rightfully, she should have come back with the number one plate. And it would have been interesting to see CJ versus Kaylee as well as the other riders.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, and no disrespect to any of the girls out there doing it, but I know that there is a couple of girls in there that are way off the pace. I mean, talking about 10% rule, you could get into the 20% rule and they're not going to make it, And if that's the case, and the option is to get out the faster riders to make it a slower series, then you know what, just don't do it.
Yeah, I think they probably look at it as a series for Royal Enfield where they can just bring new people in all the time, and that's where the build, train, race part of it comes in. They bring new people in, they build the bikes, they learn how to ride and this and that. So it's more of a true beginner series, but that's just me talking. I don't know.
No, listen, I understand. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, but is that something that should be at MotoAmerica and not at somewhere else, at CCS or where or something? I don't know.
Right.
If this is the top tier, this is the top racing in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more important to showcase the kids on the O'Valleys than it is to do that kind of stuff. I mean, I actually went over and I watched the kids I actually didn't get to see the bigger race, but I watched the kids and I think is it 110, 150 and 190 in the O'Valley series?
Yeah, 110, 160 and 190. Yeah,
I actually got to see the 110 kids only because my time was short. I had to go and do something. But there was one or two kids out there and they were using all the track, and one kid's helmet was bigger than his body. He was using I don't know who it was. He was a kid with the matte black helmet, and the helmet was the size of the tank on the bike. But this kid was flying. And I know the kids in the bigger than the 190 series are flying. And I honestly believe, and it's no disrespect to Kaylee, obviously she's one of my own girls, or any of the girls in that series, or Royal Enfield. But I think it's a lot more important to show younger, real talent coming up in the ranks on the O'Valleys going up to maybe the Junior Cup than this Royal Enfield thing, which, I don't understand it. I mean, I know that there is some kind of connection. I see Royal Enfield are over there doing some of the flat track and stuff with missions. So maybe there's something more to it that we don't know. I don't know.
Colin, it's interesting that you were over there looking at the Mini Cup riders. So were you looking for kind of the next rider on your team? And with that in mind, can you tell us why are you involved in racing? I mean, tell us about your background with regard to that, if you could.
Well, I've always been a motorcycle head myself as a kid. I mean, I was 12 years old, and I'm going to tell my age, 19's probably 78 or 77, 78. I think went to Skerries to see Joey Dunlop road racing, and it was like hooked. I mean, I never had any money in Ireland growing up, and it wasn't that I came from any kind of a poor background. It's just that nobody did. No one could really afford to have new bikes. But my first bike was probably I think it was a 76 AS3 Yamaha 125 twin, a couple of DTs. I didn't have any real bikes till I came here. And didn't really get back into it when I got over here. I kind of got stuck into working and kind of planting a foundation for myself. And then I'm going to say in the late 90s, I went out to Pocono and I met up with Team Promotion, who was probably the premier #1 East Coast track day crowd at the time. And I just did a load of riding with them. I ended up in the expert group. I was actually involved in starting. They have a thing called Team Promotion GP Series, which is an actual race in the middle of the day, and it's for the coaches. And I was involved because I did a bit at the end of it. I was doing some guest coaching. I wasn't full-time coaching with them, but I was involved in that GP Series, that Team Promotion race. I actually was in the first one that we had at Pocono East. And then I remember I had a bad crash going up the hill through turn 8, 9 on an R1 at VIR, and it banged me up a bit. And I stayed off the track for a couple of years. Came back, got on an R6. Was like, nah, this is not for me. Didn't do anything for a while. And then I heard that Guy Martin was coming over here in 2014 to do Pikes Peak. And I went, I'm gonna try and enter Pikes Peak and do this. And I actually I got the expert license sorted out. I got the entry because it's that Pikes Peak is invitation only. They invited me, and then 3 weeks before the event in 2014, which I got to confess, I was only going out there because I wanted to race against the English guy Martin, who was on some ridiculous Gixxer turbo, it turned out at the end. But I crashed up in Western Pennsylvania and shattered my clavicle. So I stumbled home, limped home to New York, had surgery. But I did it in 2015. I got to do Pikes Peak, which was a great adventure. Unfortunately, Carl Sorensen, one of the guys, got killed on the Thursday, which kind of made the whole thing a bit bizarre. But I met a great bunch of dudes over there, and it kind of got me back into hanging out with the race community again, I guess. And then Brian McGlade, who was a Twins rider, he's a buddy of mine. I think it was Brian that told me that he saw this kid down and flying around on a bike at Pittsburgh, I think it was. And I went down on it, and I watched the kids somewhere else. I think it might have been the same weekend I went down. But then I approached the father, and I started. That's when I got back to it. Not directly being on a bike, but to be part of. You know, the construction company was doing well. Everything was okay. Had a few bucks. I said, you know what? Let me help out a kid. That's another thing that's important, and a lot of people don't realize it, that there's a lot more fast kids out there that are broke than there is rich kids that are fast.
Yeah, got that right.
It's so important for people to help out young talent, and that's why it's so important for us to showcase it. You know, it's really important for us to have especially the Valley stuff and the Junior Cup stuff. You know, because I know that there's 50% of these kids that are out there. There's no way they could do it without sponsorship. So and you can't just be word of mouth. It can't be, hey, my kid's fast. You got to be able to say, hey, come. I mean, put it this way. I mean, I've got 2 season entries this year, and I've got a bunch of weekend passes left over. I'm going to invite a bunch of people to Jersey because it's my local track, and hopefully, and it's not just about seeing Dom. It's about seeing the Junior Cup kids. You know,
mm-hmm.
Spencer Humphreys, Tyler Humphreys. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's riding our 400 there, because unfortunately, Levy Baddy, who was on our Junior Cup program, they had a problem with sponsorship, and they couldn't finish the end of the season. They just ran out of money. But you know, I'm inviting people that I see that could be potential sponsors, and I want them to see, you know, kids like Spencer Humphreys, and any kid that's out there in the Junior Cup that could do assistance, you know.
All right. Well, you bring up New Jersey, and it's a good point for us to change the subject a little bit. I know you're very proud of your Wounded Warriors program, and rightfully so. So, you know, with New Jersey coming up there, why don't you give us a little idea of what that's all about?
Right. Well, I've always had a spot for it as far as military, especially military coming back from overseas. And I think it's very, very hard, and I think it's very hard on them, but it's also very important I think there's a whole, probably not just one generation, probably 2 generations of kids that I'm not going to say have no respect. I just think they don't even know that it's going on, because it's secondary to the lives that they lead in this .com, Facebook, TikTok, all this other horseshit world that they're living in. And I think it's very important that young people realize that, and I don't get to I don't know what the word would be, but the reality of it is freedom isn't free. There's a bunch of dudes out there, and whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, they're going overseas, and they're over there protecting the freedom that people have here, and the kids don't realize that, and I think it's very important that they do realize it. I mean, a country like America that hasn't not had soldiers deployed internationally in probably since Korea, right? I mean, I don't know that there's anything wrong with this country having conscription, quite honest with you. Not to get too military or gung-ho about it, but I mean, they've got a monster welfare system that spends a lot of money. Well, how about putting kids into the army for a couple of years? I mean, most of Central South American countries do it. A lot of European countries do it. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But that being said, and I don't want to get too far off the track, but as far as the Wounded Warriors goes, I think it's very important that young people know what the likes of the Wounded Warriors is about. And then the weekend at New Jersey, last year was very special because it was the actual 20th anniversary. And I met with Nicole, and we had a really good celebration of it, and we put on a good a tribute to 9/11. And this year we're doing the Answer the Call Foundation, which is also the NYPD FDNY Widows and Orphans Fund. We're gonna do a fundraiser with that in conjunction with the Wounded Warriors. So yeah, that's pretty much what the Wounded Warrior stuff is about.
Hey, Colin, one of the things we bypassed a little bit, and I mentioned at the top, it's one part of you that I don't personally know a lot about, and it's the Bartcon construction part of it. You mentioned coming over here from Ireland, but tell us about what your business is. What kind of construction do you do in New York City? Is it commercial buildings? I mean, what's the extent of your company?
Yeah, it's mostly I essentially do like drywall, framing, ceilings, and plaster, and mostly commercial space. Yeah, I mean, typically like in a commercial building, it could be anything from an accounting firm to a law office to, I mean, back in the 90s when I started in this business working for a much bigger company I started off as a super. It was just law firms and big ass firms that had huge footprints, like 15, 20,000 square foot footprints, like even bigger stuff, like the MetLife building and these, like the World Trade Center. I had clients in there, the Oppenheimer Fund. But back then, like a lot of these companies don't even exist anymore. So it's a much smaller market. But I'd be a subcontractor for a bigger GC, which is the carpentry package, drywall and ceilings. So yeah, it's a lot of, although I've done a fair bit of retail and some restaurants, I've done some really cool jobs. I mean, I don't like the regular cookie cutter, typical law firms or accountancy firms or whatever, like just open space, commercial spaces, they just don't do it. Like, just no challenge in it. Whereas if you do a high-end restaurant or nightclub or something like that, I've done a couple. I did the Horseshoe Lounge, which is underneath the Parliament Hotel on 46th and 8th. I did Le Jardin, which is a French restaurant in Lexington. I did that with a good client of mine last year. But I like jobs like that. So yeah, drywall, ceilings, and high-end plasters and stuff like that.
How does your business, is it word of mouth? Is it referrals? I mean, do you just go from one job to another without a lot of, you just keep it going that way? Or how does it work?
Well, it's usually, I mean, I'd like to think that it's return, it's return clients, I work for 2 or 3 different GCs and a couple of clients direct. And, you do a good job and the client calls you back to do more of it,
Yeah. Well, that's the best form of advertising there is just if you do a good job, they're going to just keep having you there. Plus they're going to tell other people involved. So yeah.
I mean, it doesn't, believe it or not, you never see Barton Construction is not written on any of the bikes. It's just Bartcon Racing, right?
That's right. That's right.
But I've never actually, it was Bartcon Racing. And that was another reason, by the way, going back to the Wounded Warrior thing, is that I was pretty much the sole sponsor of the team. So, I wanted to put something on the bike that it was there for some people to see. And I think the Wounded Warrior project was a great logo. I liked it. I knew the guy, John Amray, who's a buddy, has become a good friend of mine, and Nancy and Adrian over at the Wounded Warrior office. Great people. But it's something that I proudly have it on my company van, and we have it on our bikes. Yeah, doing the Warrior project. Again, the reason I'm bringing it up again is because there is no logo for me essentially advertising anyone's business bar like Mike Triple Strong Racing, Mike Stronic, our crew chief and engine builder, but everyone kind of knows who Mike is, and Dr. D, obviously. Right. Mark Digotowski, who's one of our main sponsors, a great guy. We couldn't do it without him. Mark Mark was working with a different firm, and he has since got away from them, and he's on his own. So I was saying, well, how am I going to put your name on the bike? And it was me, by the way, that came up with Dr. D, which is now on the bike, it's Mark's last name, Dukatowski. And I hope I'm not destroying it, saying it wrong, but so Dr. D on the bike, and I kind of robbed Valentino Rossi's font, but when I saw it, I thought it was Dr. D as in what, Dominic, Dr. Doyle? But it's not,
right.
It's not, it's Dr. D, Mark Dukatowski. He's a great guy. Mark got introduced to me by Dustin down in Indianapolis. Year before last. That was a year before.
I remember we talked about Dr. D, and I had to get with you to figure out how to spell his name properly, because I was a little bit off when I first tried to do it. I tried to do it phonetically with an Irishman giving me the pronunciation, so I think I was a little off with that, but I finally got it right. And he's like up in Minnesota.
Even if you have it spelled in front of you, it's a mouthful just to say
it. It is hard.
I mean, it's Dukatowski.
Just right. That's right.
He's going to listen to this podcast and call me and correct me, or maybe he'll say high five. Right, man. I just call him Mark.
Hey, so we're going to get ready to wrap up here, but before we do, I want to talk about, so you've been involved obviously in Junior Cup, your Twins Cup now, you've been involved in Super Sport. You know, what's ahead for Bartcon Racing in the future with Dominic or with the team? Are you going to, you know, what's on the horizon, even as early as next year or down the road from that? What can we see from your team in the future?
And that's something right now that's very much up in the air, and I'm saying that to be very, very, very frank with you, in the sense of I made a point of saying to Dom and Mike that we're not going to make the mistake we made last year and leave it too late to have a game plan or to make a firm decision on what we're doing. That being said, I think it was very important for us to get that bike right, for Dom to fly on it for the last 3 rounds, which was Pittsburgh just gone, and next week Jersey and Barber. I think the bike's right where it should have been, obviously earlier, and that's not fault of Dominic's at all. But I think the bike's up to pace. Dominic can, I mean, to be honest with you, Dominic can ride anything. He really can. He really, really can. And that's why I kind of took advantage of Jess. I mean, I was probably going to go to Jess as much as Jess coming to me, especially, I think I might have even called Jess when we knew that we weren't going to be at Brainerd. And I called up, I think I called Jess actually. He didn't call me, and I said, listen, Jess, you know, can you what about Dom riding? What do you think about Dom riding your bike at Brainerd? Because we're limping home with the R7s. Because don't forget that we were leaving the West Coast and we had to get back to PA, rebuild 2 complete bikes. 2 complete bikes we had, because he high-sided coming down the hill too at Brainerd and destroyed one of the bikes. And so, not to lose a train of thought there. Oh yeah, so it was me that called Jesse and said, what do you think of Jess or of Dom riding one of your 600s at Brainerd? And then Jess said, yeah, let's do it. And now it's become, I think he's probably going to do the same thing at Jersey and at Barber. I don't think there's any reason why he won't. As far as next year is going, we don't know. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be doing anything with Junior Cup next year. And I'd like to think that the next couple of rounds is going to help us make a decision on what's best for Dominic, because at the end of the year, you know, I love Dominic like my own son, I really do, but I'm not going to hold him back and say, listen, this is what we're doing next year. We have to sit around together and say, this is what we want to do, and is it feasible? And at the end of the day, that's all about money. I mean, if we were to go, for argument's sake, if we were to go back to a Super Sport or even a Stock 1000 program, that's a huge chunk of change just to build them bikes before the season even starts. Huge chunk of change. And you know, we have a full R7 program, Twins Cup. Don't know whether someone would come on board and race for us in that, or we might try and move that whole package for the sake of raising money to put some other program together. You know, we've a lot to think about, to be honest with you, over the next 4 to 6 weeks. But, you know, hopefully again, Dominic could do well on the 600 Super Sport. Maybe I can get someone to see him and get involved with us and say, listen, we'd like to help out, you know? Like I said, doing a complete program from scratch and we're, by the way, and Dominic Doyle, and this is no disrespect to anybody else that's out there racing. And I'm not boasting about my kid because he's my kid, but if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He's not a filler. He's not a 10th place to 20th place rider. He's a top 5 rider.
Right.
So
that's kind of the way Paul and I mean, like I was saying, we would see that with him in, you know, when he first came into the country and was racing, we were like, you know, you could see the kid was special. So
no, and the reason I'm saying that is because you can't cut corners or you got to go to full hog if you're going to build a program to put Dom on a bike.
That's right.
He's got to be out there on a super competitive bike or not do it at all, you know? So again, myself and Mike are working on talking to a few different people about hopefully getting some financial assistance for next season. And if it comes down to it that we can't make it work financially, then we'll obviously do whatever's best for Dom and try and hook him up with a really, really good package with somebody else, you know?
Yeah, that's
obviously I would love nothing better than for Dominic to be wearing leathers with my name with Bartcon Racing on him next year. But if it's not in the best interest of in the best interest of Dominic's career and future, and it's also a headache, and let me be selfish, if it's a pain in the ass for me, then it's for anyone, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That sounds good. So we'll wait and see on that. And one thing that's good with you, Colin, is you keep us kind of informed on what's going on with your team. And we usually try to help you get the word out on what's happening. So
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we wish you luck and wish Dominic luck for, you know, the remainder of the season and certainly going into your home track here at New Jersey and all that you do with Wounded Warriors Project. And, thank you for being on with Paul and I. It's high time that we got you on. We knew we'd have a good time with you. You're a colorful guy. And I always say the guy puts a lot of love into the F-bombs that he drops when he talks. So.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping for more.
Oh, you want? Hey, I got half an hour. You want to do a quick rerun?
I think he's barely ahead of Chuck.
I'm only barely ahead of Chuck Yukato?
Yeah.
Hold on, give me 5 minutes.
Challenge accepted. Hold my Irish beer, right? So anyway, but no, seriously, Colin, thank you for being on with us.
Thanks a lot for having us, guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll look to see in a couple of weeks and when we get down to New Jersey, and we'll wrap this season up in the best way possible. So anyway,
100%.
Yeah, and all the fans out there, we're looking forward to seeing you guys. Hopefully you'll be at our next 2 rounds, one or both of them, if you can do it. And we'll look for you there. And we're going to keep bringing this podcast to you every week, Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. Thank you again, Colin, for joining us, and thank the fans for being on with us.
Thanks,
all right, guys. Be safe.
Cheers.